Welcome back to Sincerely the Corrupt podcast. I'm going to be doing this by myself, and it's stupid. Today, we're missing Jody. Jody's got a cold, so Jaysha's all on her own, but that's okay. We'll get through it, I'm sure. And today, we're going to do a follow-up on Matthew Dane Case. You know, Thelma and Louise came through for me, and I've got some sunshine requests from Salem. Not very good ones, but enough information that I needed, actually. And I'm also going to be talking about a little bit about a case that happened right here in Laclede County, an assault that happened in Laclede County. And I know that there's a lot of rumors going around. There's a lot of talk about what I've shared. And I'll tell you, there was a couple weeks ago that I shared a book. And I shared a book called Gateway Blue. And that book was written by an old police chief that came in our town. I believe it was 2008. And it was the same time as C.P. Craig. And so I shared this book because there's 2 chapters written on Laclede County. And I was honestly quite shocked that nobody had really heard of this book, to be honest with you. And I think everybody thinks I've got a full story on that and all these things. But, you know, the truth is, guys, what I do is I'm an advocate. And why I started Sincerely the Corrupt podcast is, you know, when I was in healthcare and after I lost my son, I realized that there's got to be a purpose on this earth. I want to be here and I want to help people. And I can remember being in the healthcare system and I see all of these people that were kind of ruffled through the system. They didn't understand it. They didn't understand their health. And too many times it affected them in a very negative way. I stepped out of that into my wellness center and then I realized that all of our systems are broken. All of them. Our justice system, our healthcare system. And I truly believe that they've grown so big that they no longer serve the people at a certain point. Does that mean that I think that we should take our whole city officials down? No. And a lot of the times, you know, when you're looking at a certain situations, and we've had a lot of, you know, fly-ups here on Facebook and things like that with our city officials and things like that. But guys, the whole system isn't bad. And I will never believe that the whole system is bad. I do believe that we've got some small cells. And the problem is we don't call this stuff out. And I will be an advocate for those individuals. So when you hear a story from me is coming because there is a victim that has still got no justice, where the system has failed them. And that's my passion. You know, even in that book with what he's read, that's a one-sided book. That's his story. You know, I haven't spoke to him. I don't know if he needs help, but it's an interesting story. And I'll tell you that I went to the Laclede County newspaper or not the Laclede County newspaper, but the library, and had looked up a lot of news articles that were back in this time. It's interesting. It's interesting to see how a town responds, you know, whenever we get new people in. And some of the things that I think about is we're a small town. We kind of, you know, develop our ways. So part of me was wondering, you know, do we brunt change? You know, is that why we don't like when different officials come in? You know, I did also look at, we've had a mayor, Josh Ray, that was ran out of town. I haven't talked to him either. Those things do interest me because if we've had situations and maybe there were, I don't know a lot about those things, but I shared Gateway Blue because it is a story written about our town. And I know that there's also concern about me doing a story on a totally different aspect related to that. And I will tell you this. I will always weigh risk versus benefit when I tell you a case. Always. And I will think about it and I will dwell on it and I will make sure that it's appropriate. And by what I mean by appropriate, I mean, is there a victim? Is there a victim that needs help that did not get the help that they needed from our systems? Is there something that we need to look at and fix? And that's what I do. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands how I run this podcast. And I know many people are messaging me all kinds of stories. I love it. I love it. And what I've learned is that so many people do need help. I'm going to soon be telling the story of Tyler Smith. That is a case out of Illinois. I think that's a very active case, which is why I want to help those parents. If you've looked at that case, you'll understand why they need help. And those things are my passion. You know, my passion is to help people that have been harmed by our systems, because I believe we need to scale back on those systems and realize why we built those systems in the first place. Those systems were built for the people and they need to serve the people. So getting on to our stories today, we're going to talk a little bit about the Matthew Dane case. And like I said, Thelma and Louise came through for me. And, I also run my wellness center. So it's really hard for me to get to other places and pick up requests. And, dealing with these, city officials isn't that easy. But kind of I want to explain that too, because I'm sure the city clerk in Salem hates my guts. But the reason being is, do I think she's corrupt? I don't know. I don't doubt it, because we are trained when we go into a system and we work that they protect something. And a lot of systems work to protect something. And I can tell you healthcare even does that. We work to protect certain things. Kind of like, why do you think that we made so many big words for everything? We're smart, so you just do what I say and it'll all be okay. We got to stop doing that. And we've got to stop realizing that things aren't this difficult as we make it. And we've got to look at these systems and start fixing it, right? I don't believe that she thinks she may not even know what I'm actually digging into. She may not even know why these papers are relevant for me. But I'll tell you, she was trained well, because she was trained to fight against the sunshine request, and she was trained to minimize and give me as minimal as I can get. I mean, I would be dumbfounded if this is all we had. I realize it's a long time ago. Maybe our filing systems weren't so great. So is it possible? Yeah. But 16 hours of work to give me 20 papers is a little odd. And I have sent messages to our attorney general, because I've had issues, with these sunshine requests from the get-go. And I will get an email response, or I will get a letter. I think I just got a letter in the mail from one of the complaints that I filed several weeks ago. And so it's a useless system for me, honestly. It's not helpful. And then I find out in November of 2024, our Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, pulled off the ability of individuals to report corruption. To me, that's a red flag. That's a huge red flag to me. And so what you're going to be finding coming up soon is that I'm going to make a short video of my complaint. Because if they won't take my paper complaint, I'll give them a video one. Because this is absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, what I pulled from these sunshine requests, and I'll share all of these, you guys know they'll be on that page where you guys can look at them. I'll even put in what my sunshine requests entailed, because there's several people that reach out to me that are good and resourceful and can actually help me. Tell me if I did something wrong. Did I not request these correctly? Like, should I have said something differently? Because I know that they do that, and I did my research, but I will always take help from resources that are good with that system. What I found whenever we got our sunshine requests back, and I want to dip back just a little bit, because I want you to understand where these sunshine requests are valid. And if you remember, Matthew Dane was murdered in September of 1986. Shortly after that, Sally left Las Vegas, and she came back to Salem. And at that time, she became very much of interest to Las Vegas PD, and she had become the one and only suspect. So Detective Ziola traveled down to Salem to investigate and interrogate Sally. And she incorporated the help of Michael Fetters and Jerry Armour, who were two Salem police officers at that time. In December of that very year, so that's just a few months later, Mayor Molnack called a special meeting of the Board of Aldermen of the city of Salem, Missouri. And those aldermen were Beulah Chaffin, Daniel Udy, Raymond D. Weaver, and a Russell Miller. They called this meeting for the firing of these officers. And a closed meeting, I want you guys to understand what that means. That means that the mayor will call a meeting with these aldermen. They will sit down. They'll discuss whether they should fire these officers or not, and then they'll send them a letter of dismissal. They did not give the police officers the right to know the allegations against them. They did not give the police officers the right to understand what witnesses were making accusations against them. And so they really gave them no due process of law. And so when you see this, you see Attorney Beggar, there was an attorney in there at this meeting, and he cited 4 objections to this meeting when this meeting was taking place. He reports that this meeting was not properly conducted, that he questioned the notice of the hearing and the change of the meeting place, and he questions why the officers were not informed of what they allegedly did or failed to do, for which they were terminated, nor have they been advised of who the witnesses are against them. That makes sense, right? for me, I'm trying to understand this alderman system because for me, it doesn't truly make sense. The only way that this works is for corruption, in my view. The only way that we would do this sort of closed meeting to fire actual officials, that even our citizens won't know why we fired police officers. To me, the only reason this could happen is corruption. And you'll even look when, they filed lawsuit against the city of Salem. They were unsuccessful. And then after the fact of this lawyer making the point of he had these concerns about, how they conducted this meeting, they gave their response. And they said, after considerable deliberation, Alderman Chaffin moved the Board of Aldermen to deny the officers the right to hear the tapes or any evidence against them, to deny them the right to learn of the allegations for which they were terminated, to deny them the right to learn the names of the witnesses who testified against them, and further deny them the right to come back before the board with this evidence. Seconded by Alderman Miller. So that was Alderman Chaffin and Alderman Miller, that was a Russell Miller out of Salem, who then also didn't go as far beyond but to fire those police officers, but they were going to cover up why. Because I think we all know after hearing the story of Matthew Dane, if you haven't caught that story, it's the first 3 episodes. And if you're watching this, you might want to shut it down and go back, because this is an important part of what I've been looking for and talking about. But this absolutely shows me the corruption that was going on in the city of Salem back in 1986. And I feel confident saying that. I don't know how else we would have this sort of closed meeting. But I'll tell you, this was the only useful pages. I think it was 3 out of 20 was useful for me for anything that I had actually asked for, which was kind of ironic. That's the kind of part that blows my mind. A couple other updates. I have still been in contact with a homicide detective. However, it's time for her to come down, I think. It's time for her to come down and start doing some questioning of individuals. And so I'm going to be linking her phone number. It's going to be right down here on the screen. If you have any information regarding this murder, several of you have reached out to me. Several of you have, weird things that kind of happened back then or stories to tell. Even several people have reached out to Jody, and she loves it. She does love it. So if you have any information that could be helpful to this homicide detective, or if you just want to let her know that as a community, you would love to see her come down and re-interrogate Sally and re-look into these individuals, go find Mickey. Go find Mickey. He's still avoiding, Karen is still avoiding homicide detective all the way. Mickey, for some reason, it just dumbfounds me. I just don't understand. I don't understand how a man of God could not have a hard conversation about this, and could not, if he was even entangled in this conversation. And guys, I've done my podcast. He knows about it. He's known about it for a while. His brother hung up on me, so he's fully aware. Don't you think that as a preacher, and I know many preachers that they'd come to the surface of this and they'd say, "Oh, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?" They would. They would. And the only reason that they're going to avoid me is because I'm telling the truth. And that to me says a lot. And it's odd to me that I will tell you this. I did, let the pastor of that church know. I know several church members have reached out to me. I know that he's came back since then. And I'll tell you, I'll never bother your church. You won't ever see me come into your place and try to interrupt your place of worship. I'll never do it. But somebody should be asking this man why we're still allowing him to preach to our congregations when he can't even have uncomfortable conversations. And that was his sermon. Somebody should be asking that man this question. And that's part of the problem. That's also why I do what I do. Because many of us have kind of quietened it up and we're like, well, I don't really want to talk about it. And what I do is not for the weak. I promise you that. I've had to really come to some gripping factors that I may not be liked. I may be disliked. That's okay. That's completely okay. But what I'm doing matters. And this matters. And somebody should be calling this out every single day. We are still going to Vegas. Lots of things have kind of tripped us up. One of them being that the homicide detective, I think she gave us only like a week that she was available last month and this month. So we are very much working on getting ourselves scheduled to go down to Vegas. But there's also some other things that I'm trying to line out beforehand because I think it's important for me to be able to follow up when I get down there. So I don't just podcast. I work these cases, especially when I'm working for people that have been harmed by the system. I'm going to continue to fight the system. I'm going to fight until they recognize the problem and they do something about it, or at least acknowledge it. So I am going to work this, and I always will. And that's my passion. But we still have a lot of work to do in this case. A lot of work to do in this case. And I'm still ready for it. The problem is, we're kind of in that limbo, dealing with government. We don't have a lot of good efficiency. I'll tell you, if it took 16 hours to find 20 papers, I just paid somebody 16 hours of work to find 20 papers in our city office. That's a problem. I think that's a significant, in 2025, that's a huge problem. And there comes a point to where we have left things so simple because they're easy. They're easy to slide things under the rug. Well, that's a thing of the past. And I think we should be developing ourselves to be a little better about that. Even when you see places, I won't name names, but certain places that will charge you for $1 a copy because they buy the fanciest paper known to man. And if you work in city officials, look at your paper. Make sure you're not one of those people. Because what they're doing is they're trying to deter people from requesting sunshine requests. Somebody is obviously going to maybe change their mind if they got to pay $1 a sheet, don't you think? So they put things in place to be easy for them to kind of ruffle the system. And I don't know if you're sick of it, but I'm sure sick of it. So I'm ready to fight it. And I'm ready to fix this system so that it finally works for the people again. So we will also have another podcast when we go to Vegas. I'm working on getting my husband skilled enough, because I can't take Sweno everywhere, to be able to do a travel podcast, So I want to take you to Vegas with us. I want to take you to Illinois when I go fighting for justice for Tyler Smith. I want to take you on those journeys with me. So hold tight, because that's coming. But now that leads me to my next story. And my next story is a Laclede County story. And some of you guys will be like, oh, Jasha, you're touching into your homeland. Well, sure I am. I live here. I think this is where I think we should fix this the most. And this kind of blew my mind when I found this case, because it was kind of dumbfounding to me. But you guys know that I don't come unless I have facts. Be sure of that. I have facts. I have video recordings. I have everything that I need. And my issue with this case is that we have had a couple in this community that has been harassed. We had a gentleman that was assaulted, and then his parents were harassed in every kind of way by a couple of other individuals. And then our system kind of dropped them and left them hanging. I'm not going to go into full detail into this story yet, because I am still working with our officials, because I do believe, and I've reported it, I did my own investigations, I found things out for our city, and I have sent it to the proper officials. And I say city, but it's actually our county that I'm working with. And I believe in our systems. I want you to know that. And even when we find problems in our systems, we will always need those systems. So you can't just go breaking, crashing systems, because we need them. We need healthcare. We need justice. These things are important. And if I don't believe in my own town, who can I believe in? So I'm going to only give you a tidbit, because we have till October to do something appropriate with this. And I realize it's hard, and when you get in the system, and this story is a hardcore story. I may break it up in 2 parts. I may break it up. I may give you a little tidbit in the beginning today and then really go into it a little later. But I'm not going to go into this full course until I speak with our officials again. I just think that's fair. And I've not given up on them. I haven't at all. But I want to tell you this story because many of us will know these individuals. And I think many of us had developed a perspective based on it. It was easy to do. And I promise you I can understand that. You know, I did emergency medicine for a long time. And we get kind of tunnel vision when it comes to drug addicts. We get worn out. We get beat down, you know, and when you're working in that system and you're working with those individuals, and I'll tell you, drug addicts can be manipulative. They're not, even when they're telling the truth, you won't believe them. You won't believe them because they just commonly don't. And that's what happens. And that's part of a problem within the system, right? But we as professionals have got to learn to scale back on that a little bit, because this story goes far into our healthcare system. And what we did to this individual, not only after he was assaulted and during his assault, but even when he was taken for help to our local hospital for assistance, we failed him. And we need to look at these problems and realize that we've got to fix these things. Like, these shouldn't be happening. So I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to tell you that, to give you a little tidbit back on this story, these individuals have known each other for a very long time. And I will name them. This is Jeff Reed is our victim in this case. And I realize he has had his problems. He has been a drug addict in the past. He's never been in trouble for assault or anybody else. But I'm going to tell you guys one thing. He is a person. And if this story had happened to my son, whether he was a drug addict or not, I'd be fighting it every single day. I can promise you that, every single day. So I want you to listen to this. And I want you to understand that sometimes we focus on, well, that couldn't be really true, so I can't really listen to it. Or when somebody is so frustrated and so many things have happened to them, they start spewing. And they start spewing things and it just doesn't make sense. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're loud. They just need to shut up. And we just don't listen, right? Or they get so loud and so many things have happened that now everybody is against them. And they start going at everybody that was involved. Or they think that everybody was involved. Those things happen to individuals that suffer these things. It doesn't mean everybody that they think is part of this is part of this, I don't believe that. But I think when so many things happen to certain individuals, it can cause a certain expression that most of us in society will just simply ignore. And I probably would have too, in the past. And hopefully I've grown since then, and that I'll listen, and I'll tell you every single one that I've listened to and dug into has been true. So we need to start waking up and maybe listening to people just a little bit more. I'm going to tell you about a post that was made. I call it a vigilante post. That's exactly what it was. And our individuals is Jeff Reed, who is the victim here, and the other couple is Christy and Cody Harmon. Why am I telling this story? Because there is a couple that has been really affected by this, a couple severely affected by this. But not only that, but many of the children in our community have been affected by these individuals, and the Facebook posts and the rhetoric and the attitude and the behavior that is just off the charts. And so I don't apologize for this story. This story we need to hear, and this story we need to call out, and we need to stop it before it gets bad. These people have been reported to our school board, and the situations that have been going on between children within our schools, and it's toxic. It's absolutely toxic. So I want you to listen to this post, and I'm going to tell you what, guys. Everybody that posted under this or liked this post, how do I explain this in a way? You're not bad people. You looked at this post and you're like, oh my gosh, stole her truck. Like, definitely needs to get, you didn't know that these individuals were going to go chase him down and pin him in an intersection and beat him with a crowbar and kick on him. You didn't know that. So don't think that when I talk about this post, that I'm talking anybody else but the actual suspects, because I'm also a very reasonable person. And I realize that even good humans make mistakes. Even good humans choose the wrong side sometimes. Even good humans don't see it for what it fully is sometimes. So understand that. And so I'm going to read it. First off, it goes, share the hell out of this post. This is Christy posting this. Let's help make this piece of blank famous. This is Jeff Reed, the one who stole and trashed my truck. So obviously he's on the run now. He stole a trailer from us a few years ago, and I will do whatever it takes to find him. I'm sure the minute we pulled out, all the other crackheads staying at this motel was on the phone calling him, so he hasn't been back to the motel. He has several warrants for his arrest, besides my truck. He is on the bike in the picture, but truth be known, it's stolen as well. Already had a Lexus SUV sitting there as well with stolen plates on it, but the plates have been removed by the cops, so he could be in it as well, but when he left at 2:11 p.m. yesterday, he was on the bike. Cops' exact words this morning was, he's going to be a hard one to catch. He's slippery. Well, I'm going to help them, even if I have to sit at this hotel myself. Any information on his whereabouts, please contact me. I'd love 5 minutes alone with him before the cops get to him. Guys. So first of all, I want to bring out some facts, because we can all go on CaseNet. Cody Harmon is not an innocent man. I'm going to tell you that. No innocent man. And I'm going to tell you, these guys knew each other for a long time. And I have a 22-minute phone conversation that I have personally listened to that I might share. But I'm going to let my officials handle this first. That would tell you otherwise. He says he's on drugs. And he is threatening Anita Reed on this 22-minute phone conversation that I personally listened to. So I bring you facts, and I bring you facts always. And I think you guys know that. That was posted on September 20th, 2020. And then I'll tell you what happened after that. And I'm going to give you a synopsis of this story that I do have evidence on. I have evidence all throughout it. I have pictures of him and the incident and his tire iron marks on his back. But what ended up happening was on October 7th, Jeff Reed was visiting his parents, and that was on Pine Tree and Falcon Drive. And after he left, he was on his motorcycle, he had his helmet on, and leaving his parents' house, he turned right, and that took him to the intersection of Pine Tree and Falcon. Well, here comes Christy in her red Hummer, and then here comes Cody in his dynamite towing truck, and they pin him in at the end of that intersection, and Cody Harmon jumps off that bike, starts beating him with a tire iron as Christy is kicking him. At the same time, other people show up to the scene. There's 2 witnesses that I have spoken to. Yes, I have spoken to. And I've also found witness tampering in this case. And other people that showed up that I don't believe possibly knew anything that happened. Because what happened after that is after they did this, they then called the sheriff's office. I think there was a couple different calls throughout this to report that they had caught Jeff Reed and that come pick him up for his warrant. And somebody had reported there was a possible assault. And that was because Jeff Reed had ran off to the neighbor's house after they had assaulted them, banging on the door, begging for help, that he was about to be killed. Guys, when the sheriff's deputies show up, there is evidence. They say there is a tire iron on the scene. You have to understand how manipulative these kind of people can be. You just have to understand it. And I do understand it. I know this personality type. It's not a good one. I can promise you that. But I understand the manipulation that happens. And so this is why I'm concerned is where that manipulation happened within our system, right? Well, I'll tell you where it happened. That day, I don't know, I think they might have been tunnel visioned and didn't think he actually got assaulted. Maybe they thought Christy and Cody just got him. He was complaining that day at the scene of severe right lower leg pain. And so they picked him up and they arrested him. So imagine this. He was the only one arrested on scene that day. And he is arrested reporting severe leg pain. He goes to our local hospital where his chief complaint is severe right leg pain. All throughout his visit, you see the nurses documenting pain. 10 out of 10, leg pain. 10 out of 10, leg pain. Then you see discharge where this doctor comes in. Now they've scanned his head and neck. They've only visualized this. They did do a chest x-ray. And then when they came in to discharge Jeff, they said, you're cleared for jail. And he said, what? You haven't even evaluated my leg. You haven't even looked at my leg. And notes, I've read. I have the medical documents. So these are facts. I only say facts. And he said, there's nothing wrong with your leg. In little or so words. And Jeff went off to jail. Actually, Jeff got angry. It shows security came in. And then he was taken off to jail. And never had his leg x-rayed. Never. 3 days later, Christian County was taking him up to Fulton, and they did stop and give him an evaluation as his right leg was double the size of the other. And on that evaluation at Cox Hospital in Springfield, they found him to have a fibula fracture. Not only that, but we have pictures of his tire iron marks. They go all the way down his back. Cox Health reports that injury was due to a blunt reinforced object that would be consistent with a tire iron. And no, I get it, guys. Sometimes we get tunnel vision, but this is for my healthcare providers. X-ray him. X-ray him. They can drive you absolutely nuts. I've been in the system. I know it. I've worked with it. I would lose my mind sometimes. But you X-ray him, you still take care of the human. You know, the problem is, I feel bad for Anita and Kevin because this story doesn't stop here. Oh, I wish it did, but it doesn't stop here. The harassment doesn't stop here at all. It gets worse, very much worse. And not for Jeff Reed now. Jeff Reed's in a probably better place, you know? And it's the parents that are stuck outside of this that are now getting harassed, right? Like getting their storage unit broken into and their tools stolen, or getting a car shot up on their yard, or tampering with witnesses. Literal witness tampering, guys. I spoke to these witnesses, so I already know. I mean, they admitted $500 cash pay so far. But I have a feeling it's a little more. And even when, on the morning of court, because I'll tell you what happened, he pushed. You know, Kevin and Anita pushed for charges to be placed on Chrissy and Cody. And I'll tell you guys what, they eventually did. They put charges on them. They put felony assault, kidnapping. There were some others that when I go into detail, if I need to, I'll tell you about. But then the harassment really started for Kevin and Anita. That's when their storage unit got broken into. And I've already found evidence on that. It didn't take me long at all. I spoke with the storage manager and who owned it back in the day, who is now sharing dynamite towing advertisements. Mind-blowing. You know, sometimes we can be fooled by people. And so I'm here to call it out every single day of the week. And especially things like this. Because these are the same individuals that next time when I come back, I'll show you what they have done to our teenagers in town and how they talk and how they treat and how they preach for aggressiveness and incite negativity and incite our children to fight within these schools. They need shut down. This is what I do. So don't be mad at me for telling you the truth, because I come with receipts every single time. They can be mad at me all they want. I don't care. They've done enough damage to our society. And I am pushing for them to go forward again with charges on this case. We have until October, and I'm working with this family in many other ways to make sure that they can get some retribution for the heck that these people put them through. And that's exactly what it is. So come with me next time, and I'll tell you a little more about this case, and hopefully I'll be able to talk to our officials and see if we're going to move forward or what's going to be happening and what actually I can tell you versus what I can't. But do know that that story is a true story, and do know that we got to do better. We have to do better as a society. We have to do better and try to see through this stuff. It's hard sometimes, but we have to see through this stuff and see things for what it is. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help people, just like Kevin and Anita, and just like these parents within our community where their kids have been wrapped up in a Christy and Cody situation. You know, even their own family has been affected by this lady and by this group of people. So I'm not sorry for this. These are the kind of things that's worth it, right? You'll never see me calling out somebody for who they sleep with. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care if somebody had an affair in a church somewhere. I just don't care. I'm sorry. I don't care who you sleep with. But I care when things like this affect people so bad. And that's what I'm here to call out. And I'll call it out every single day. So thank you for tuning in to Sincerely the Corrupt Podcast. I know everybody missed Jody, but I will be back and we will have another episode coming out soon. And so this is the first episode without Sueno. So I know it's not going to be near top notch, but we're going to be able to roll these out even better. And he is still going to be helping us quite a bit. So stay tuned and check out our next episode.